So today's first question is basically a bookend. Okay, so this is off a Mox question, but it's a good start off on, particularly if you're going back over this topic. So we're doing axonometric projection, which is basically using two views to create a 3D view. Now, usually it's a plan, neither a front view or a side view. It can be a front view and a side view as well. It has been, and particularly at higher level questions. So I suppose the first thing to look at, sorry, my thing is focusing there, is just what's the difference in higher and ordinary levels. This is an ordinary level question, which we'll start off first, and the big difference is just these are always 30 degrees at higher level. So the way I'll explain it is basically that'll work for both levels, but there will be some things that will work that you'll need to know more so just for higher level. But if you follow all the steps and learn them off, then basically, or learn off the methods in terms of how to do it, then they'll work for both. So I've given a line here, and I'm going to use the same colours as I had. So they started off by drawing this triangle here first. They did it in green. Now just be careful, this may not be the right length. I don't think it is. No, I've made it, oh no, it's probably a millimetre short. Not much. I thought it was actually, I usually make them a bit shorter so that people don't use them. It's only a fraction. Okay, so I'll just go over that. So we should be able to see that. Okay. Okay, so the autofocus is still going a bit wonky there, but it should pick up okay. So I'm going to go 60 degrees and 60 degrees. Now the reason I'm actually going that is because this, let's see, this here will bisect it, okay, my 30 degrees. I'm just saying there is no actual 60 degree here, but it'll be an isosceles, sorry, an equilateral triangle. It's basically axonometric projection. So I'm going to use a red here to bring this in. Okay, bring this down. Maybe I should have used a pink, it might be a bit lighter, but anyway. So there's my crow's foot that I typically start off with to do a 3D question. So I have my X, sorry, this is the Z axis they call it, this is the Y, and this is the X. Okay, so that 100 there really is just for it to fit neatly on the page, and sometimes you may have a point that corresponds with something. So it is important to follow it, but technically it could be this triangle here, the green triangle could be any size. So I'm going to start off with plan, okay? So I'm bringing down these two lines here, and they're brought down at 90 degrees to this line here, okay? So in this case, they're going straight down. I've never not seen a plan straight down, but it's just important to understand that that's part of the reason why these are here. So this is, just put a little symbol there just to show that they're 90 degrees. Now, I need to figure out roughly how far down in order for this to go. So I'll figure it out today and then you'll know. But if you want to look at it, if you're doing this on an A3 question, you want to look and see, well, how much of it sticks out? So obviously if I put this green line here, right here down the bottom, I'm going to be in bother because some of this sticks out further than it. So if we look at it, let's see, that's 40 is about 100 and that sticks out about 12 or 13. So say about a third of the way. So a third of that is 33. So we'll come up with 35 from the bottom. Okay, so if you don't understand how I figure that out, you don't really need to for the minute. When you're doing this on the day of the exam, it'll be on an A2 page, so you'll have a lot more space to work with. The one problem with the new course is that because they usually fit on A3 pages, they'll fit, but they're usually a bit tight. So I left that gap there to be 33. So what I want to do now is I want to draw the semicircle. Now technically if I'm already level, I can bring this down here, but we're going to look, that may not work at higher level. So what we're going to do is we're going to bisect it. Now I'm going to do this in a yellow, so hopefully this will show up okay. So the way I bisect a line or split a line into two is basically go over halfway. So this is something that comes up in maths as well. But if you did forget it, how to do it on the day, you could literally just measure it and divide by 2. That's basically what bisecting is doing. You'd lose the mark for not putting in the bisection, but the most important thing is that you continue on. So that seems to come out there. I don't know if the bottom ones can be seen. Sorry, because I have a bar here. I don't know if I can move it on my screen. I don't think I can. Okay, to see if it's in front. But basically that there's another one down below, just in case it doesn't show up on the screen, which it may not. You'll see it more clearly in the next one. Okay, so move my set square and we draw this down. Okay, so they kept their semicircle this bluish colour, so we'll use blue just to keep it the same if I'm referring to it. That should be exactly halfway. I'll just double check. I'm pretty happy with that. Okay. So I draw my semicircle like so. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring down this line to meet it. Okay, so again, this will also hit the bisection, but that's just coincidence. It will work in an ordinary level question, but it may not work in a higher level question. So I'm bringing that down there, and then we're going to use the red basically just to join my two corners. So what I have there is basically the space in which my plan is going to go, and also the angle. Now what they've done is they've told me that this is 45 degrees, right? Now the reason it is because this is perfectly in the middle. This has to be 90 degrees because any triangle within a semicircle, so if I pick any point and join the two corners, it's always going to be a right angle. But they told us 45 degrees, and again that makes it a little bit easier because I can use my set square here and I can use it to draw parallel lines. So we know that the width here is 15 and 20 and 15. So I'll mark the distances, so 15 and 20 and 15, so that's 50 in total. And again, I'll just lightly draw first. I'll bring this out. Now be careful here, this length here is not exactly to this corner, it's slightly less. When you mark your 65, my markers maybe a little bit difficult to see because they're a bit thick, but when we mark this, that should go like so. Okay, so again, apologies, the autofocus sort of goes in and out on this, which I can't fix. It's just one of the anomalies, particularly with a white page. Okay, so that's gone slightly off the page down here, down the bottom, but the majority of it can be seen. So we know this is 20, but what we don't know, if we look here, we don't know this distance here, and we don't know this distance here. But basically this is the top view. So if there's some bit of information missing here, it more than likely will be given here. So this view is me looking down on the bookend this way. So that means that I'd see an edge there and I'd see an edge there. So this is 10, which is basically this part here, and this is 40, which is basically this. So that's basically 10. I'm going to write it on it. It's a bit difficult to see there again because it's 6 hours, so that's just 40. Okay, so I wouldn't normally write it on it, but just so that you can see for the video. So 10. Let me draw this across like so, and then we bring these ones out. And they should come out another 40. Okay. So we're happy enough with our plan there. So, and what we'll do is we'll get our, let's see, do I have a black there? I have a black. Hopefully it's not run out. So we'll draw this in. Again, a small bit maybe gone off the page, but you can just trust me that it's there. And try to tilt the head maybe. And that might make it see it once I get this drawn. Okay, so I'm happy with my plan. That's a little better. Okay, oops. So what I want to do now is I want to put in the elevation. So my elevation is going in up here. So again, if I looked here, the way I drew these blue lines is I went out perpendicular, or you could actually look at them also as being parallel to the Y line. Both are correct. So what I'm going to do is basically I'm going to do the same up here. So if this Z line was 30 degrees, I'm going to come out here 30 degrees. Or if this was 60 degrees, 90 degrees, that is 30 degrees. So whichever way you want to look at it. So I'm going to use my blue again, and I'm going to bring it out. Now, this time if I look at this here, you'll see that this doesn't stick up above the object. So I'm going to bring it up till I'm nearly up at the top. Right, so I'm fairly close to the top there. And I'm going to use my green line to draw it across. What was the next step then? I need to draw the semicircle. So how did I do that? I took my compass, I set it over halfway on that green line, and I bisected. So again, this may not have shown up the last time, I should be able to see it there now. Okay, so my two yellow marks. So I'll draw a line there just to join them. And where the join gives me the center point, I'll take my blue marker and I will draw my semicircle. So always just double check, just in case you've made some sort of small mistake. It's usually that you put this point in slightly the wrong spot, but that it touches both sides. So the semicircle just goes on that side. And again, how do I find the point at which to join this angle? I extend this out here. So again, I'm just going to do it in the yellow, just so that you can see it. Well, it's not going to be too heavy for the minute, and that gives me that point. So while the two of them will correspond, particularly if you're doing higher level questions, it's good to get used to using it for this method. So what I want to do now is I want to draw in this view here. Okay, so I can mark in my height there 65, So you mark it in here in red. And again, it won't go right to the top. So be careful there, that's not exactly to the top. And again, I don't know the length here, but I should know that whatever was the length here must be the same here. So it's actually 65 both ways, and I can mark my 10. And I'll just use my compass to draw my 40. So what I would do at this stage is I would use my adjustable set square. Now if I didn't have an adjustable set square, or it's missing, or whatever the case is, I could use sliding set squares. But if we go on to higher level questions, it's going to be very, very difficult to do this without an adjustable set square. It's going to take an awful lot of time. Technically, if I mark it, it should line up at 15 degrees. Okay, and that's just from having done these questions, but also just from the junior cert question, if you've done it this way. There's a metric question from the junior cert. So bring this up. So again, that should be a small bit back. Mine may not look like much, just again because of the thickness of the markers. Okay, so that's that. And I'll just put a dark blue in because I'm only going to draw on this once. My 40 circle. Okay. So marker point there. And we're happy enough. That's it. Okay, so we'll heavy in what's meant to be heavy. So the bottom line is heavy as far as 65 mark. This line here is heavy as far as 65 mark. So it'll be a small bit red, that'll still be light. This comes out and it comes down. And despite the fact that we made out of two pieces of timber, if it's timber one like the picture, it's shown to be like that there's no edge between them. Okay, so again, apologies there, the focus is just being awkward. Okay, so my, actually I should have used a black circle line really, because we're using black. When I went over them with my dark blue, they actually nearly look black. Okay, so that's that. So I must be a little bit off here because it just looks a little bit wider, but overall it's pretty good. Okay, so we take away my C-square and you can see I've that done. So the only bit I haven't done here that's shown in the thing is basically some of the initial setup of the 3D. So basically of the two sides. So again, use as many hints. They showed with a red line that they brought that up. I'm just going to use a pink now just for something different. And just for a little bit lighter. They brought up this line here, which is basically this line here. And they don't show this, the next part. They do show that they brought up this point. And they do show that this comes down at 30 degrees. So we'll do at least what they show, right? And then we just look at what lines up. So this probably goes down about that far, maybe a little bit less, but we'll go that far for the minute. Okay, so if you want to check anything, see what lines up. This is the front edge of the object. Let's draw that, you'll see that that actually lines up with that. So if I bring this up here, we actually have this surface. Now in ordinary level, these would always be 30 degrees. So this will actually go back. So I now have this edge here, and I have this edge here. And I know that if I bring up this, although it's not shown, I sort of show some bits. Again, they're giving you a fair bit of hits. There's a few missing. That's the top of it. So that can be brought down. And that's basically that. So what I'm missing basically is this point, and this point. And if you want, you can number them. This is a relatively simple one, or index them. So I'm not going to bother indexing in this case. But if it was a more complicated one, I possibly would. So if I can bring that down. And again, you can see how they got that point there. This one here, I suppose, is a little bit confusing in that they didn't show that this isn't finished. Right, that should actually extend up a little bit further. So, and then this one here, again, you can check there's 30 degrees. Right, but if it wasn't, right, so if it wasn't an ordinary one, I can bring down that point there, and that would show me that bit there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to heavy them in, and I now have the front edge of my bookend. Okay, and the only bit that I was missing is basically the bit that joins this. So apologies, my marker is a little bit inky, but you can see the general gist of it there. So what I'm missing is basically the back edge, and I'm missing this front edge in terms of being heavied in. So I have it found. I just haven't heavied it in. And in fairness, they had it found there too, but they've still left it light for the minute. Okay, so I'm going to draw the rest of it lightly, and there's a reason for that. Okay, so I'll just try to make this thing. The reason is this curved edge here is going to get in the way of it. So some of it will possibly disappear. The top actually won't. So again, if I bring up this, no, I made some mistake there. Oh no, this is why I made a mistake, because it's this point here that has to go. Right, so the way I copped my mistake was that that should have lined up with a point in plan as well. Okay, so we have it like so. So I'm just going to heavy the top because the curve isn't going to interfere with the top, just so that you can see. Okay, so it's basically this sort of surface here. So hopefully that's fairly seeable. So there's my bookend. So what I have is basically a curved surface. And if you look carefully, you'll see that they have dots here, a dot here, and they also have a dot here and a dot here. I think they have two there. Oh, that must be something to do with this one. Okay, so I'm not worried about that one. Okay, so these two here are the ones that I'm looking at. Okay, so when I looked at it there carefully, that would be this edge and that would be here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark these dots. I'm going to call this point 0 and I'm going to call this point 3. Now, what I would do here is I would usually split this into 3 equal parts, right? So I'm going to take, well, we'll go with 15 and 30. Doesn't really matter what distances I take as long as I make them even. What I'm going to do is with my adjustable set square, I'll bring that up there, bring that up there. Some people will split it into 60-30, which is perfectly fine. But the only thing I find then is then if you take a distance here and mark it off. If I take 15 and 30, just for example here, I can then mark 15 and 30 here. Okay, so that's the distance. So there was 0. That's the distance into point 1, that's the distance into point 2, and that's the distance into point 3. Could also mark them here, but there's a quicker way of doing that, so we'll have a look at that in a second. So what I do is basically, it's like, well, it's like join the dots to a certain extent, or any sort of indexing. You're basically bringing it up from one view, or the same as you do in your plan elevation view, bringing it across, and if that's the case, if that's 0 coming down there, and that's 0 coming down there, then we have 0. Now we do the same for each one. Now there's going to be a lot of lines all of a sudden, and also the thickness of the marker doesn't help really because they're all on top of each other, but hopefully you'll be able to figure out what I'm doing and follow along. So that looks to be where one is. This one comes across on this one. That's somewhere there. I'd have to double check which one is right. So again, I'll follow one up and follow one down. There we go. There's point 1. Follow line 2 up and follow line 2 down. Okay, so try to write 2 there, and then 3 is up, and 3 is there. Okay, so I have point 1, 2, and 3. And what I'm going to do is, I just call this point 4, just for the sake of marking it in. So 4 is actually below 0. So if I bring it up and bring it down, there's 4. Okay, so I'm going to do the 2 long lines. Maybe I'll do this in a blue and shade it in afterwards. So 0 to 4. And 4 goes to 3. And again, if I mark it, that should be straight up, and that should be at 30 degrees. So what I'm going to do now is I'm basically going to sketch my curve, like so. I'm happy with that. Okay, so the last thing then is basically there's a series of other points at the back. Now what I could do is I could bring these up again, and I could call them 5, 6, 7, 8. But what I can do simply is, if I can find what one is straight across from 3. So if I bring this one up, that gives me, that's the width of the thickness of the bookend when it's been scaled down by the axonometric method. So it's going to be slightly shorter in the 3D view than 20, and you'll see that if I check it there, it's, what is it, looks to be like 60. So I know that's the scale down distance. So what I would do is I would do a compass. Now it is important that if you're using the compass method for this, the examiner can see everywhere you used it. So there's that one. 2 would be the same, 1 would be the same, 0 would be the same. And if you wanted to check that point there, it would also line up if you were accurate. You could technically bring these across and bring them up. There's loads of different ways to do it. I find using the distance method is the easiest method, because 1, it'll keep consistent even if your accuracy is a little bit off, but 2, it's quite quick. Okay, so I have that, but I suppose just important that the examiner can see sort of my compass marks, which I think he will. Okay, so now then this bit here would be heavy. So we'll see, can you see my black there? Okay, So I bring this across with my black marker, bring this one down to heavy it in. So that's why I didn't heavy it in, because there's a certain amount hidden in behind there, and I don't mark in hidden detail in a 3D view, only in 2D. And there's my question done. And I could just do a light bit of shading. Let me just see if I had a blue there handy. And there was my blue shape. So just to make it a little bit more stable, that was the blue bit being brought down. So the curve bit is the difficult part. But again, there's a bit in that, particularly if you haven't done it in a while, there's a bit just in remembering how to do that, particularly in figuring out the points and just figuring out what you're going to get. Okay, so that's the question there done. Put your name and date on it, and that's the initial one completed. So that'll be an ordinary level standard, probably on the simpler side, but a good one to start off with.